The spelling was done by the FCC.
Who does the spelling around here? Must be a new
Yeah.
Yep.
Democratic.
I've never seen it.
Which one?
Sub-element.
Sub-element? Yeah, there's elements and there's sub-elements.
That really is a word.
It is. It is. All right. Well, welcome. We're at week number 7. And we're covering chapter 7 tonight.
Good morning, teacher. Good evening.
And before we get going too far, I don't know how many of you I know some of you have gone out and used this program. It's called hamstudy.org. And it is a good way to study for the test. It has all the questions in the pool. So every question in the question pool is in this program. And you can come into this program, you just go to hamstudy.org. I just signed in as a guest tonight. I've got an account out there. It's hooked up with one of my computers, not this one, because this is the one I use for work. I don't hook this one up to anything. I'm just using it to project tonight. But I've got the password on my computer that's in that backpack. But I can't remember the password. So it's in there somewhere. But anyway, you pull this up and you can go in, and it's got the technician class, it's got the general class, and it's got the extra. So it's got all 3 tests. And since we're doing the technician, and it's the right years, 22 to 26. So this is the new set of questions, right? So you just click on that, and it brings you into this mode here. And you can do a study mode, you can read the question mode, or you can do a practice test. I like to start out with the study mode because, and when it first comes up, it'll give you all the questions across all the sub-elements. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about sub-element T1. So I'll just pick T1 for now. You just come up to the top, and then where it says all questions, just change it to T1. And then it starts giving you questions. It says, which of the following are required for remote control operations? And you usually think that all of the choices that are correct would be D, but this time it's A. So it mixes things up. B, a control operator must be at the control point. C, the control operator must indirectly manipulate the controls. And a control operator is required at all times. Any thoughts on what the answer to that would be? All choices?
Yeah, you told us already.
Well, I didn't know that was actually the answer, but it is the answer. So if I go to next, it'll bring up the next question. If your license has expired and it is still within the allowable grace period, you may continue to transmit on the radio bands. Well, there's a grace period. We're going to talk about this a little bit in our class tonight. After your license expires, your license is good. Once you pass the test, it's good for 10 years. After the 10 years are up, you get 2 years of grace period that you have to renew the your license without taking the test again. So if it expires, and it's expired 6 months ago, or if it's expired a year ago, and you go to the FCC and say, hey, my license is expired and I want to renew it, they will renew it, and you don't have to sit for the test. Now, if you get to 2 years and 1 month, sorry, you got to come back and take the test again. Okay? But you got 10 years plus 2. But this question says, if your license is expired and is still within the allowable grace period, may you continue to transmit on the amateur radio bands? So, based on what I just told you, I would say yes for up to 2 years. No such luck. It tells me I'm incorrect.
It says expired. Renew. It says expired.
It does say expired. Now, I'm going to say why. Why in the world is this question wrong? Why can't I? I mean, it tells me, the FCC says, I got 2 years to get this thing renewed. Why are they telling me I can't broadcast for 2 years? Well, if you go up here to this corner, this little dooley bobber up here, and you click it, flips it around. And it gives you some information. The grace period means grace period to renew your license without having to retake all the tests. Not the grace period to transmit. The day your license expires, you're no longer eligible to transmit on the radio. Okay? So, but I kind of like this way. It's a good way to study, at least for me. And you go to the next one and you go through all the questions. So, anyway, just, if you haven't looked at it, I would encourage you to take a look at it. Run through the elements. This is telling, over here it gives you how you're doing. Right now, I'm 6 out of 12 questions that they're going to ask me here in this piece right here. And I'm at 12% of them that I've seen. And my aptitudes, I'm at 50%. Okay, I got one right and I got one wrong, so it's calculating correctly. Maybe.
What's it cost to renew?
To renew would be $35. It'd be the $35 that they're currently charging. Used to be they didn't charge anything. It was free till this year. And then the FCC put a $35 fee on it. Okay, well, this week we're going to be talking about licensing requirements, licensing regulations. It's kind of, I knew that one question, right? 2 years. I read it earlier today. Actually, I remembered that one from before. So anyway, what are we going to cover tonight? We're not going to cover anything if I don't get this thing to work. Okay. We'll try this again.
Did you try turning it off?
I did. Off. Back on.
There you go.
It's my mouse. I can click it with my mouse too. There we go. Now I got it working. I just had to move it one page. So what are we going to cover tonight? We're going to cover how the FCC rules are organized. Crazily. What is amateur radio's mission? What are the different types of licenses? What are the licensing exams and what are volunteer examiners? How does that all come into play? What's the responsibilities as you get your license? What would your responsibilities be? And Rick, don't give me any guff.
We got responsibilities?
Yes, sir. We're going to talk a little bit about frequency and emission privileges. We've already talked about that several times, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. We're going to look at some of the international radio rules. And we're going to talk a little bit about amateur call signs. What's your call sign going to be? What can it be? Etc. Okay, so without reading the answer to this, who is the one that makes and enforces the amateur radio rules that we follow? The FCC, the federal. Our wives. Yeah. FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. I was typing something earlier, and then I think I've mentioned I'm an accountant by trade, and I also almost put in SEC, but it's not. It's the FCC. It's not the Security and Exchange Commission. It's the Federal Communications Commission. All right, so let's start with the question: who makes and enforces the rules? It's a pretty important thing to know. The answer, of course, is the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC. No matter what you're doing on the air, the FCC rules must be followed. Even if you're operating on behalf of another government agency. So let's say we have a tornado that crashes through St. Cloud. And we've been asked to go out with our radios, provide communication, and we're working with FEMA. And FEMA asks us to go out on some frequency that we don't have authorization on and transmit to a different organization to get information out. Can we do that? No, we cannot. Because we're governed by the FCC rules and we're governed by our license privileges. Okay? So that's, yes.
Well, didn't you say once during emergencies?
Depends on the emergency. That is a good point, but it depends. If all of a sudden we're cruising down the road and this tornado's coming through and it takes Rick's big black van and it turns it upside down 5 or 6 times and Rick's hanging out, you know, and there's no phone service, we can get on the radio any way we can to call for help for Rick.
Well, now, what was the story on the man that was helping the firefighters? They just got fined $34,000. Was he outside of his bands?
He was outside of his bands. He was broadcasting on the fire service bands.
Okay.
And so he was outside of his bands. It wasn't a life or death situation. He was going to broadcast and say, when I was a kid, I remember what this area is like, and you should go over here.
Oh, okay.
That's what he was trying to communicate to them. And, you know, it wasn't life or limb, so therefore he did not have privileges to do that. All right. So what's the purpose of the amateur radio service? And that's what it's called. It's called the Amateur Radio Service under FCC regulations. It's a part of FCC Regulation 97 is where amateur radio falls. But what is the purpose? And there's several. So one of them is recognition and enhancement of the value of the amateur service to the public as a voluntary, non-commercial. Remember that word, non-commercial communication service, particularly with respect to providing emergency communications. That's one of the first purposes of the amateur radio service. The next one is a continuation and extension of the amateur's proven ability to contribute to the advancement of the radio art. Now, think of art. This is a question on the test. One of the answers has art in it. Okay? So think of drawing a picture with the radio. Okay? Art. That helps you remember that question. Just a hint. But it is an art, and it's the advancement of that art. The encouragement and improvement of the amateur service through rules which provide for advancing skills in both the communication and technical phases of the art. Communications and technical phases, both of them are important in the amateur radio. And continuing on, the expansion of the existing reservoir within the amateur radio service of trained operators, technicians, and electronics experts. So as you get your license, you're going to become an operator, a trained operator, an important piece. And that's what it's all about. Training new operators, expanding the art. And another piece is having fun. And continuation and extension of amateurs' unique ability to enhance international goodwill. Yes, sir.
So we are experiencing that art now.
We are. We are. Okay. So the types and classes of licenses. So if you think of an amateur radio license, and do I have mine in here? Yeah, I do. Holy moly. I'll show that later. But as you think of the amateur radio license that you're going to be getting, it two parts. It consists of 2 parts. What are those 2 parts? I couldn't do that twice if I wanted to. You did. I could probably do it 3 times, Rick. So there's 2 parts to the license. There's the operator part. And the station part. What's the difference between those two? Any idea? What would the difference between an operator piece of the license and a station piece of the license be?
I could read faster, I'll tell you the answer.
I'm not sure it's in there. I don't think it's in there. Rick. Or Howard. Howard's got the answer.
Well, station has a license and different people can transmit station. And an operator just has license for that operator.
Okay.
Close.
I'm just going to say, operator is you. The individual with the license of the station is what you're using to operate on.
That's the equipment, yeah.
See, it's good.
It was right on target. So if you think of the operator, think of the me, okay? It's the me. I'm the operator. I can operate. What can I operate? I can operate equipment. That equipment makes up my station. So I have a licensed station. My station is designed to operate on the amateur frequencies. So it's a licensed station. Now, if I have a station that's designed to operate on GMRS, let's say, on GMRS frequencies, and it's not designed to operate on the 2 meter, the 70 centimeter bands that my license is, what's wrong with that picture? It's kind of a mismatch, isn't it? Because I don't have a GMRS license. I do, but let's say I don't. I should not be operating that equipment without that license, right? But I can operate ham radio equipment, and it's part of my station. So your license gives you those two pieces.
The one thing I will say on the aspect of the commercial side, most other radio station licenses are for a fixed transmitter, whereas ham radio is one of the unique services where the individual is licensed over the station itself.
Yep, it goes across both. Your commercial radio stations, it's the stations that's licensed.
And so if you look at their licensing, you'll actually see GPS coordinates for where their transmitter is located at.
Yep. And it's their employees that can operate that. And they're commercial. We're not commercial, and that's one of the key things to always remember. Yes?
GMRS, is that just one frequency?
No, it's a range of frequencies that's
Would that fit into here?
it's in between a couple of those.
What does it stand for again?
General,
General Mobile Radio Service.
yeah.
The original intention of GMRS before kids got a hold of it was if you ran a business like a warehouse and you needed and you wanted your employees to communicate, instead of buying a repeater and commercial radios, you could get a GMRS license and apply for it for your business, and then go to Walmart or Radio Shack and buy GMRS radios, and then you would be assigned out of the 16 channels that are on the GMRS radio, you would be assigned one, and then another business would be assigned another,
Yeah.
and you'd be able to communicate.
I mean, it's similar. It's got channels. Some channels have a little higher power that you can use versus others, but it's
And basically, kids got a hold of it and started playing as two-way radios, and so it totally changed the...
changed it, and now a lot of families use it. You can get one license, and anybody that's in your family can use that license. Okay, so this is what an official license, so an official copy of the license would look like. And this is what you'll get after you pass your test. The FCC will issue this, and you will have your official license. And then down the bottom, it's got a cut along this line, and it gives you, so you can get one that you can put in your wallet. It's always a good idea to have your license with you, just in case anybody ever asks for it. A lot of times we'll go out to the state parks and do parks on the air. People might come up and say, "What are you doing? You don't have the right to be here." Yeah, I do. This tells me I have the right to operate this radio, and the park tells me I have the right to be here.
Park ranger might come and look.
My park ranger might come and ask you to look at to make sure you're not doing something illegal. So it's always a good idea to have this. I just carry a copy of it in my wallet. Howard.
I don't always have my wallet with me, but I always have my phone. So I take pictures of stuff like that.
Yeah, that works. That works. That's one way that you can prove that you have a license. And really, one of the best ways is the FCC website. As long as it's posted on the FCC website, you got your license.
That was a question.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
On the website.
So,
One of the other pieces of information that I would have along with the radio license is Minnesota actually has a statute that prevents people from traveling around with radios that are capable of scanning. But under one of the few agencies that are authorized to have standing capable radios is the amateur radio service. And I've run into a few people who are trying to meet Mosey Nelson.
Which one are we on?
you know, they're mixed up. It's not going in order.
I thought you had a
Yeah.
little bit.
I have
Yep.
this out there, you have
Yep.
this-
Nope, they're not in order.
Trying to read it and do that.
Even
Yeah.
though I don't drive, I still get-
I'd worry about this one before I go to that one.
Is there a picture of that in here?
No, no.
The more you know.
Okay, so the licenses, what kind of licenses are there? I know we've talked about this briefly before, but the first license is the technician license. That's what we're here for in the class, right? We're looking at the technician license. It is exam element number 2. So the amateur licenses are broken down into elements. Technician is element 2. General is element 3. Extra is element 4. They're all 3 written tests, multiple choice. And the technician class license, it has 35 questions. You have to get 26 correct in order to pass. That's 75%, 74%,
Yeah, it's
something like that.
75, 76%.
Does it cost to take the license test?
If we'll get to that, but there's here at the club, and it's a good point to bring up now. We have 2 different testing groups. We have one group that is an ARRL testing group, and we have one group that is sponsored by a group called the Laurel Volunteer Examiners. And this is an ARR VEC, Volunteer Exam VE card, that I can be on the ARRL team. And this one is that I can be on the Laurel team. So I can be on either team. The Laurel group that we have, they do not charge to sit and take the test. It's free, okay? The ARRL group, the testing fee is $15 to sit and take the test. If you don't pass the first one and you want to take a shot at it again, if you miss it within a certain number of questions, usually about 4 or 5, you can take it again. Another $15 for ARRL, okay? For Laurel, you take it a second time, no extra money. You pass the test, the FCC is going to charge you $35 either way to get your license. That's just a new rule that they came out with.
15 and 35.
If you do it with the ARRL, if you do it the Laurel, it's 0 and 35. And right now we try to have testing every month. In August we'll have the Laurel testing. September ARRL is having a testing session. And we usually try to alternate months for the most part. But, and then I think October, November or something, Laurel's got it. So, but yeah, good question. Good question. Okay, the general, it's 35 questions as well. It's a different 35 questions than the technician class license. And then when you get up to the extra, that's 50 questions. And you have to get 37 of those correct. Percentage is the same, but you have to get 37 correct in order to pass that. So, and all those questions, those 35 come out of that pool of about 400.
Same 400 for the other two?
The other two are different 400. And I think,
Well, that's not fair.
I know. I know.
Once you get your licenses, it is fair.
So yeah, it's a different question pool for the general. And then the amateur extra license, that question pool, there's more questions in the pool than there are in the other two. The first two of the pools the same, of about 400 questions apiece. And I think the amateur extra is 600.
Wow.
Kate just went through all of those 600 questions just recently, so she knows it's 600. So
Sounds worse than it is.
it does sound worse than it is. If you go through this hamstudy.org and you're scoring up around 85, 90%, you're golden. Okay, you'll go in and you'll ace the test. For the most part, we had someone that tried the extra. He didn't quite do so well, but that's okay. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier. The amateur license are good for 10 years. You can renew them indefinitely without ever taking another exam. So that's a great thing. You get your technician's license and you want to keep that for 50 years, you can. I would encourage you to go to a general or an extra, upgrade, and then you can keep those for 10 years and renew it for out taking the test. So you can have it indefinitely without ever taking another exam. But what if your license expires? You're supposed to stop transmitting and you have a 2-year grace period to renew that license without taking that exam again. I wouldn't want to take the exam again. I'm going to forget so much over those 10 years. I forget enough. You know, what did I have for breakfast, right? Okay, so the exam. What's the exam look like? So there are examiners. And I'll just tell you how we set up our room here. We set the front up. We put 2 tables up here. We have one examiner. We have another examiner. And we have another examiner. And we have a guy running a computer. Okay? So when you take the test, you get through with it, answering all your multiple choice questions, it goes to the first examiner. He reviews it. We got a template he reviews and makes sure that all of your answers are correct. And yay, 100%. Well, if you miss some, he notes how many you missed. Then it goes to number 2. And he double checks number 1 to make sure that number 1 got it right. If number 1 didn't get it right, which can happen, those 2 will start arguing about it. No, no. And they come to an agreement which is right and which is not, and they'll re-look at the answers. Then it comes to number 3, and guess what? He does it again. It goes through 3 different steps to make sure that for the protection of the person taking the test, to make sure that it's graded correctly. Because let's say, my wife's taking the test.
And she bribed you?
And she bribed me. There's a big problem. I'm not going to be an examiner because I can't. If I have a family member taking that test, I cannot be part of the examination team. So you're out of luck, dear. You can't bribe me or anything. Yeah, I know you wouldn't try. So anyway, but that's how that works. And then with the Laurel group, it gets put into the computer, gets uploaded, it gets sent to the FCC, and the next business day or two, you've got your call sign. It's quick. ARRLs, they've got that that ability, but within the club, we're still doing a lot of that manually with paper, and it gets sent to them. So it takes a little bit longer to get your call sign, can take up to 2 weeks with ARRL versus 2 days with Laurel.
Yeah, usually the league though, it ends up being about 72 hours. Because when we mail it in to the ARRL, it goes by express mail, and our league liaison, unlike some other league teams through the league, he will try and mail it out that afternoon. So when we get done with the test session at noon, he's dropping it off at the post office that afternoon.
Yeah. So it goes out, but it is done manually. But where Laurel does theirs electronically. That's the only difference. Other than that, it's the same tests and same answer keys. Okay, so that's the volunteer examiners. And to become a volunteer examiner, you need to, for the Laurel testing, you need to be at least a level above what you're grading. So you need to be at least a general in order to grade a technician license. And if you've got people taking a general test, you've got to be at least an extra. No generals you can't grade the same level that you are, except when you're an extra.
Why would anybody want to?
Why would anybody want to be a volunteer examiner? Because it's a good service to help people become amateur radio operators.
You can't help them. You're examining them. You can't say,
Nope,
please.
you can't do that.
So,
But without volunteer examiners, nobody would get licenses.
No different than a teacher. A teacher can't give her pupils the right answer
When you do the test.
SAT or
Yep.
whatever.
Same principle. Yep. So, but no, good question.
Trust me, if you speak out while testing is going on, they come down hard on you. I know.
He speaks from experience, I take it. I wasn't there that time, Rick. I don't know.
Oh, it was painful.
Okay. So we encourage all the anybody that's taken a test to pre-register for the test. You can go on our website, w0sv.club. Has our test sessions out there. Click on the test sessions and there's pre-registration and you register for it. For Laurel only. ARRL, there's a different process that's, as Lee goes, a little antiquated, but still it works. And theirs are more walk-in only, right?
No, you can,
Or you call the,
yeah, you call
you call Charlie, leave a number, and
So
he'll call you
how
back.
Before the test, you need to pre-register.
A few days.
Oh.
Yeah. A week to a few days.
So the last class before we have test, you'll remind us to
Oh, yeah.
pre-register.
Oh, yeah. I will. I will definitely do that. So we encourage you to pre-register. It just makes it so much smoother the day of the test because we have all that information in the computer ready for you to go. One other piece of information that you will need an FRN, which is a federal registration number. Used to be, back in the day, that you would have to bring in your Social Security card with your driver's license, and you'd have to give your Social Security number. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't like giving out my Social Security number to anybody.
Right.
And the government realizes that. And they don't like you giving out your Social Security number either. So they have a way that you can register for an FRN number. You have to give them your Social Security number there so they can verify that you're really who you are. But then you got a federal registration number, and that's the number that you put on all your FCC documents.
How long does it take to get that?
Immediate.
30 seconds.
Immediate.
Or just do it online?
Do it online. It gives it to you immediately.
It used to be, but basically the reason for the FRN now is because of their charging the $35 fee. It used to be, at least with the league, when you would submit your 605, they would go through the process and get you an FRN, and then it would just show up on your license. But now, the
Yeah, you needed that.
Congress makes us,
Yep.
makes the FCC collect a fee. Now you have to re-register. with the
Yeah.
FRN.
So you need your FRN to take the test.
Then when you pass the test, then they got that number and they know who it is.
Yep, and once that information goes up to the FCC, they give you your call sign. I've written down my FRN number. I know where I can go find it, but I don't use it. Any communication or anything I need off the FCC site, I just key in my username, my call sign, and my password, and I get in. Okay, so you take the exam, you know, the 35 questions, multiple choice, or is multiple guess is the way that a lot of people put that, and you pass it. Hey, all right, I passed it. Now what? So at that point, you're going to get what is called a CSCE, a Certificate of Successful Completion of Examination. It's a document that says, hey, I took Element 2 for the technician class license, and I passed it. And these three guys sign it, all three of them. They all three sign it. That's basically your receipt that you passed it. Now, if the FCC, for some reason, their computer crashes and they lose all the information that gets sent to them, you've still got that piece of paper, and you can walk into the next test session and say, I got my technician's license, I want to take my general now, and it says I got it. The FCC just didn't give it to me. Or you give it to the, you know, you fax that to the FCC and say, where's my call sign? That's what's going to happen. More than likely, if that were to happen, you'd call us up, and we'd get a hold of them for you and help you out with that. So Form 605 is also filled out at the time of testing, and that's the information that gets transmitted to the FCC showing that you passed the test. Okay, so all that's said and done, all that's gone to the FCC. Now what? I'm ready to get on the radio. I want to. I passed the test. I don't have a call sign. How do I get a call sign? Any thoughts?
They give it to you.
They give it to you. Yes. So, as I was saying with the Laurel testing, it's usually a couple of days. Take the test on Saturday, usually by Monday. In my case, I had it showing up on the FCC website on Monday with my call sign. So, it's usually pretty quick.
Go to the website to get it.
So you go to the website, you key in your FRN and your name, and it'll pull it up for you, and it'll tell you, hey, this is your call sign right here. And then you can download this official copy of your license. You can download it, and I encourage you to do that. Just download it, print it, put it in a file, keep a copy with you, scan it, you know. So that's how you can find your call sign. Okay, but now you've got your license. Now you're able to communicate. You got your call sign. You're able to communicate on the radio. You can transmit. And for some reason, the FCC decides they want to get a hold of you. So they send you a letter. Well, unbeknownst to them, you moved. And you're no longer at the place where you had your address when you got your license. What's going to happen when all of a sudden that mail gets returned to sender and goes back to the FCC?
Cancel your license.
They're going to cancel your license. Yes. So you want to make sure if you move and you're using a different address, make sure you update the FCC's website with that new address. That's important. Because if they send you communication through the mail and it comes back to them, they're going to cancel you. Okay. So all of a sudden you get a phone call from Pete over at the FCC, And he says, hey, Howard, I want to come look at your rig. What you going to tell him?
You got my address, let me know what time.
Good answer. Yes. So as a station licensee, we need to make our station available and our records available to the FCC if they should ever want to come and look at them. This happens very, very rarely, but you just need to know that if the FCC requests something, yeah, we need to comply. And usually they won't come and look for something unless somebody's been complaining about you. But like the guy out in Idaho, right? Somebody complained about him. The FCC, more than likely, we want to come and talk to you. We want to look at your station. We want to look at your records, who you were contacting. Because as you contact, you should keep a log of who you've contacted, the date, who you contacted. It's just good practice. You can do it electronically, you can do paper. And but you need to have those records available for your station. Okay, as we talk about frequencies, these are the most popular frequencies for technician class operators. VHF and UHF, that's usually where we start. It's where the repeaters are. It's where you can get on air real easy, make contacts, make communication. I learned the radio etiquette as you prepare for that general license. So be thinking about that general as soon as you pass the TAC, because then it opens up more. It opens up the HF side of the world to you. A little bit of HF here. This doesn't show it on this screen, but you know, there's some 10-meter stuff where technicians have privileges. But these are the places where, you know, are some of the favorites for the technicians. So there's frequencies, and then there's emissions type, which is basically modes. What kind of mode am I doing? Am I going out with CW? Am I broadcasting data? Am I broadcasting television, FastScan TV? Phone is equivalent to voice, right? You know, so there's a lot of different things that, you know, in amateur radio we have these different emissions. And you're going to hear about those talked about. And there's certain areas within the band plan, which I don't have up right now, but you've seen it. It's the one, yeah, it's the one Stephen has right there. So it tells you, you know, where you can operate and which different modes are in those areas. So those are the emissions. Now power. Oh, I got my radio. I now have the power to transmit. So output power from a transmitter or amplifier is defined in terms of peak envelope power, PEP. That's a test on a question. PEP, it's peak envelope power. And this is the average power during one radio frequency cycle of the radio signal at the very peak of the modulating waveform. So remember our wave, our radio wave. We start, we come up, we come down, we come up, we come down. PEP, peak envelope power, is measured at the peak. Okay? So it's one way to remember, PEP, peak. Okay? So it's measured when you're keying your mic. You know, that's when you're transmitting, that's when that power is going out through your antenna. So it's taking the power on your radio and it's pushing it through the antenna. So the full legal limit for an amateur radio operator, got my pointer, I found in my backpack right where I put it, that I couldn't find the other day, is 1,500 watts. That is the full legal limit. Can't go over that. That's what our license give us the operators the ability to send out at 1500 watts. And in order to do that, you got to have a pretty good amplifier. My radio that I had in here a few weeks ago, that alone is 100 watts max. Okay, 1500 watts is full legal limit. I'm never going to get up to full legal limit. I have no intentions of going to get an amplifier. With my 100 watt radio, I can get everywhere I want. It all comes down to antenna. And I'm getting me a new antenna. It's coming on Wednesday.
Is that the day she works or what?
No, that's the day I got to go to the city. Oh no, that wasn't very good planning. She got a new antenna. Don't return to sender, please. Okay, so anyway, technician operators operate above 30 megahertz, and they can operate at full legal limit. Novice and technician licensees are limited to 200 watts peak envelope power on the HF bands. So if you're going out to the mosquito net on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock on 10 meters, 28.405 upper sideband, that's where it is. And as technicians, you can operate there. As long as your radio's an HF rig and you can get there, you can operate there and you can get into that mosquito net. It's kind of fun. Talk about some trivia and some different things. Kind of talk about things we talk about in class. Helps me remember things that I've forgotten. But you could only operate on HF with 200 watts. Okay, so it's limited. Now, once you get your general, it goes up. It goes up to the 1500 peak envelope power. Okay. Okay. So as you think about all these radio bands, there we go. We'll use this for a minute. So as you think about all these radio bands, the 10 meter band, the 20 meter band, the 40 meter band, 80 meters, you got all these bands. And all this radio, if you think from one side of the spectrum all the way to the other, there's a lot. And it gets allocated. It gets chunked up to who can use what. The police frequencies can use a certain part of those radio bands, right? Fire uses a certain part of those radio bands. CB operators use a different part of those radio bands. Amateur radio uses different parts of the radio bands. They get allocated. Well, there's some areas where that allocation, there might be more than one group that gets allocated some of that radio band, some of that width. And you get primary and secondary allocations. So it could be that the Space Force, I have no idea if they've got allocated any radio bands, but we'll use them for an example. The Space Force, let's say they have a piece of our 20 meter band. And they're allocated as the primary user of that piece. And we're allocated as the secondary user of that piece. What happens if I want to use it and they want to use it?
You're out of luck.
We're out of luck. Yeah. The key and the reason why they allocate these radio frequencies out is to avoid interfering with one another. And it's very easy to interfere with someone else. If Steven's out there operating, and this is just poor radio etiquette, not that he's poor radio etiquette, I am. I hear Steven out there operating, I go, man, I don't like Steven. I don't want him talking to Rick. So I'm going to go on that same frequency and I'm going to hit my tune button. And what it's going to do is it's going to basically, Stephen's not going to hear anything other than, I'm interfering with him. And we can't interfere with these other organizations that may have access to that same bands as us. And so it's important that we kind of, as we use a radio etiquette, listen, and listen some more before we start transmitting on the radio. And that way you avoid it. That way you're clean and you're avoiding any of those things.
About the only frequency that I know that we are secondary users to, I haven't looked in a while, and so some stuff may have changed, is the 60 meter band where we're limited. And that's more on the HF. But that's used, if I remember right, that was used by radio navigation. And so
Yeah. So
you can operate there, but if a radio beacon just happens to be in the area and they're transmitting over the top of you, you pretty much have to put up with it.
you do. So it's just something to be aware of. In my limited experience, which is limited, I haven't run into it. I just stay with and play in the bands that I know I can play in. And I find lots of stuff to listen to and play. Okay? All right, international. Okay, I've got my license. And I'm going over to Europe. Boy, wouldn't it be fun to be able to have my radio in Europe and be able to transmit over there? Can I do that? Yes, but you have to meet the requirements. Okay? The FCC's authority does not go to Europe. It's just in the US. And the European group, they don't have authorization over here. And problem is the airways go all around the earth, right? So they came up at the United Nations that this was a problem. We have to have a way to communicate across country lines, right? And so they came up with an International Telecommunications Union, ITU, which helps to organize going across the borders. This agency was formed back in 1949. So it's been around for a long time. But there are certain things we have to do in order to operate in a foreign country. There are times when our license will allow us to, if with that country that we're in, if we have a reciprocal agreement with that country, meaning that we can operate there, their citizens can operate here under their license. And they can operate at the highest privilege that their license will give us, and we can operate at the highest, using the frequencies that our licenses will give us. So that's one of the ways. Where did I put it? Here it is. I knew I had it up here somewhere. Okay, so there's 3 ways to get operating permission. A reciprocal operating agreement or authority with that other country. An international amateur radio permit. You go to their group over there and they take a look at your license, they give you a permit to operate. I haven't done this, probably never will, but it's too hard to take my radio equipment over there. It's too hard to even get over there. I haven't been over there yet.
But could be a foreign country like Mexico
Could be a foreign country like Mexico, exactly, or Canada.
or Canada.
Yep. So we do have the reciprocal agreements with those countries. And you can get a European Conference of Postal and Telecommunications Administration's license agreement to do that.
Do you have to be able to say that?
I sure hope not, because I couldn't if I wasn't reading it.
Especially chewing gum.
And so, to operate using your U.S. amateur license, as I said, we have to have that reciprocal agreement in place with that country.
And if I remember right, from when I did some studying on this, I haven't been international either, but internationally they basically have like a class 1, class 2, or class 3 license. So if you're, like our technician would be a class 1 license, so it would be equivalent to their class 1 license. And so you don't have to remember, oh, hey, I'm a technician here, and over there I'm a technician
Yep.
plus. It's just,
So, yep, good point. But one of the things to remember is there are some countries in the world that don't like us. Go figure, right? But let's say Iran. If I went to Iran, I'm not planning on going to Iran. I have no desire to go to Iran. But if it's prohibited by their government, we cannot operate there. Okay? Even if we have a friendly government that prohibits it, we cannot operate there. Okay? So that's something to remember. And then if it is permitted and we do operate over in a foreign land, we need to remember that we are goodwill ambassadors for the amateur radio community. We need to make sure that we have that proper etiquette and that we follow that. And even now, as you talk to somebody over in a foreign land, it's important that you don't talk about commercial things. You can't talk about commercial things here in the United States. You can't talk about them as you're talking to someone internationally. You need to maintain that same etiquette talking to them as you do talking to anybody else. You're going to hear on the radios once you get on there, there are some people that don't follow that etiquette. And it's I don't listen. I hear that, I turn the dial. Don't need to listen to that. Okay. And always remember that in a communication emergency, you can still talk to any ham, anywhere, if it is needed to prevent the loss of life or property. Okay. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about call signs. We talked about how you get them, but what do they mean? What do they mean? So in the U.S. amateur radio world, we have call signs that begin with, that's right here in my hand, can begin with the letter K, N, W, A to A, J. Okay? So, for instance, my first call sign that I got when the FCC issued it was KF0CWC. That was my first call sign. Started with a K, right? And we'll talk about the number of letters here in a minute. Well, I passed my general, I passed my extra, and I got tired of saying Kilo Foxtrot 0 Charlie Whiskey Charlie. Just didn't like it. So I applied for, anybody have a vanity license plate? No? Just like you can get a vanity license plate, you can get a vanity call sign. I'm kind of vain, so I got a vanity call sign. N0JFY, November 0 Juliet Foxtrot Yankee. It's shorter than the other one, and I can remember it because it's no Jeffy, okay? So I can remember it. But there could be other, for instance, Lee's call sign is K9MP. Guess what he was when he was in the military? He was an MP and he handled the dogs. So he got the K9MP. He was waiting for that call sign for a number of years before it came available. And when it came available, he jumped on it. But you can, after, and I would suggest after you pass your general or your extra, that would be the time to get a vanity call sign if you want one, because there's more options.
Jeff,
Yes.
you wrote there AA-AJ up on the board.
Yep.
Says AL.
I told you I couldn't remember what I had for breakfast.
I'm not insulting you, I'm
That is,
just noting that.
that is a good point.
I thought part of that was depending upon what region you were in.
It is.
So you changed your first letter.
I changed.
Is the first letter not the region?
It's the 0.
Oh,
Yep.
Mine is Wisconsin.
9 is Wisconsin. And when you go to get a vanity, you can get the vanity that's in any region.
oh,
I kept with 0 just because that's where I'm physically located, and it just made more sense. With Lee, the K9 made sense to him. So, but as you progress, you get, here's the districts. As Howard was alluding to, 0 is here, Wisconsin is 9. Okay, Rick is, his call sign is KU5MC. That's his call sign. And he's from Texas. So that made sense, right? It made sense for him to be from Texas. And he was in the Marine Corps.
oh, I thought it meant Merry Christmas.
It could be with Rick. Nah, with Rick it's Marine Corps. But you know, you can make it mean what you want. You know, if you can get something with your initials, a lot of people do that. Yours stands for Marine Corps, doesn't it, buddy?
Retard.
I don't see that in here anywhere.
Oh, you know that. Review.
So anyway, that's, you know, call signs. The first one gets issued by the FCC. Then you can get a vanity. As you get your general and extra, you have more choices. So as you look at vanity call signs, these are the options that an amateur class would have. You can have a prefix of K, N, or W with a 2-letter suffix, which is called a 1x2. So Lee has a 1x2. You don't count the number, okay? You count the letters, 1x2. The shorter it is, the easier it rolls off your tongue when you're broadcasting, when you're transmitting. I couldn't figure one to get 1x2. Sometimes it's hard to find them because a lot of people have them. There's only so many 1x2s that you can get. But as you have a general class license, you can have K, N, or W, and you have a 3-letter suffix. Well, mine would fall into that. I have it starts with an N, and it has a 3-letter suffix. Okay. So you kind of look at this when you're looking at getting a vanity call sign and try to fit what you want in. You write out all kinds of different combinations. And if you come up with a list of, you know, let's say you want to have, this is your number 1 pick, but if I don't get that one, I want this one. You can put in a whole list, send them to the FCC. They'll give you your top choice.